This tweet that went out yesterday that actually has since been deleted.
Why do I want an LLM to write code on the fly and execute it? Why can I not just use bespoke tools? What is the power?
You're going to be basically limited in what they define. You want your agent to be able to do everything that you can do.
It's not a coincidence that the model just happens to be good at this. It's the way that we've done stuff. Bash is way more aligned to the training data than any of these bespoke tools are.
How do we scale agents to tens of thousands of tools? That's where code mode really shines.
I'm Dex. I'm the founder of Human Layer. This is the AI That Works show where we talk about, get into the nitty gritty of AI engineering, and context engineering and harness engineering and all sorts of systems engineering things. Basically, there's a lot of engineering that happens on this show, getting beyond the demo and getting under the hood and learning to do real stuff. I'm joined by Vaibhav.
I'm Vaibhav. I'm the co-founder of Foundry, and we make a programming language. Today, we're out here in San Diego. If you can see, I don't know what you can see. Is it all white?
All right, we got you a nice mic. Now we need to get you a nice camera.
No, I think the HDR is too high here. But
Yeah.
it's a fun sunny day, and we'll be coding out by the water.
We're joined today by Rhys Sullivan, who is a very cool builder. I've been following a lot of his projects, building in the open on Twitter, a ton of really dope open source stuff, and a lot of relevant expertise to what we're talking about today. But welcome, Reese.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Reese, the founder of Executor. It's kind of a global source management tool. So you can add MCPs, APIs, GraphQL, anything you want your agent to call in one place, and then it exposes all that to whatever agent you want through code mode, which we're going to chat about.
Amazing. Cool. So today I want to talk, we'll do a recap at the end, but today I'm really excited to talk about, there was this tweet that went out yesterday that actually has since been deleted. Did anyone get a screenshot of it?
No, I didn't get a screenshot of it.
Okay, cool. I did.
Screen share it or pull it on the whiteboard.
And let's see. Posh from OpenAI says, most of you haven't noticed this, but Codex has a new feature called code mode. It's gated behind an opt-in flag and still marked under development. I'd like to share why this is a big deal, put bluntly, and then the tweet got deleted. So, okay. So we have like multiple ways to do tool use, right? And we talked about this before. But we have basically like inline tools and just like basically structured output, right? Ask the model to make JSON, and you write it in your, it's like custom to your program, harness / program / agent, whatever you want to call it. And then we had this thing called MCPs, right? MCPs, which is like dynamic plugins, dynamic, can extend your, it's basically like enables your users to extend your software.
Yep.
And then the last one is the thing we talked about last time a couple months ago was like Bash, which is basically like one Bash tool, let everyone just call / bring a CLI. And we talked about the trade-offs between MCP and Bash, between when you want to actually like just like build first-class tools. And I will go grab one picture from up above that I think is relevant here and drop it back down here again. But we had this idea of like, basically like, if you have tools that are like really, really common, you may want to build these as first-class tools into your system. And then you allow users to bring MCPs in for the long tail of things that you don't want to build first-class integrations for. And you kind of like basically educate your users on how to use them well. And then if a tool becomes really popular, then maybe everyone starts using Notion, then you pull that in and make it first class so you can really context engineer it and improve the performance.
One thing that I would just let people think about is when you think about like MCP versus Bash, just remember that they're basically the same thing. Like they're really just a way to do dynamic, broad, long tail things by having one single definition that enables that capability. But the slight difference, and all of them are obviously implemented due to structured outputs tool calls, same exact mechanism as everything else. But the main difference is that semantically they mean different things from our programs, and we architect things differently based on what type of long tail mechanism we're really using. So even though these are all like variants of the same thing, you might be like, oh, there's no difference here. Just there are semantically difference because we organize our programs differently around them. And our user expectations, behaviors are operate differently as well.
Yep. And just to put one example on here, maybe you have a tool name called Bash and your args. So like you may have like a create pull request tool if you're using an MCP, or you may have a bash tool and the parameters are just, args, GH, PR, create, ... Does that track?
I do
Exactly.
a quick call out that this
Yes.
box here should actually probably be CLIs, not bash.
Okay.
Because
that's
to me,
yeah.
yeah, to me, it's where the tools are, and so MCPs contain a
Yeah,
container
I
for
agree.
tools. Same with CLIs. And I don't know if we want to jump into this one yet, but bash is a function of the execution environment, or where you execute the tool calls.
That's true. Yeah, you could have just bash versus something else, which I'm sure we're gonna get into. So I'm gonna let Reese. I don't know if you're ready. If you're ready to get handy with the whiteboard, do you want to sketch out code mode for us, and I'll just kind of follow you on the stream here.
Yeah, let me think about how to best show this. So code mode is basically the concept of I'm trying to think about how to best visualize it on the whiteboard.
I can start sketching it if you
Yeah,
want.
start sketching
So
it.
if we have a code mode tool, basically the argument to this would be to actually write a JavaScript function here that executes, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the way that I would think about code mode is you'll tell your agent, hey, write me a script for this, and it'll write you a file on your computer. It'll write you a TypeScript file to execute some code. And code mode is basically just that same scripting concept, but it's something that you could just plug into your agent as a tool. And what I think is interesting on Bash and code mode here is they're very different than the tool on the right here, which is MCP create pull request, since it's a tool that then lets you call other tools.
Yeah, so local script would be write a script and then run with bash, right? You would run,
Yeah.
So your tool call would be write, and then this would be some JS or Python or whatever, and then you would call bash, where you would actually run the script.
Yeah, exactly.
And then code mode I'm going to put over here basically as the next or the another alternative kind of manifestation of that, right?
Yeah.
And code mode is a combination of those two commands just in one, right? From what I understand.
Sort
It
of.
generates a
I
code
would
and it
actually,
basically just runs it.
But part of
Yeah.
it is in your code mode environment, you're going to pull in all your MCPs or other tools basically. And so right, you would get MCP, GitHub, create. I'm obviously butchering how you would name these things. Pull request, and then you would do this, and then you would do const
I'll jump
PR
I'll jump
URL.
in.
Yeah, go ahead.
You can actually do
Is
in the implementation that I did, you can do proxy objects with TypeScript. And so when this tools.github.create, if you're familiar with TRPC, it works in the same way where you're not actually calling that function. When you call it, you can call a proxy function and then insert whatever special logic, whether that's
Yeah.
caching, rate limiting,
is
authentication.
is it
into
fair to think of code mode as for everyone's doing this is why? Firstly, why do I want an LLM to write code on the fly and execute it? Is the first question we should talk about. And the second
Yeah.
question to talk about is what is the execution environment in which that code runs? And I think those two things together effectively define the difference between code mode, generating code, and a few other things. It's that combo. It's what is the power of writing code, arbitrary code from an LLM and executing it? And two, what is the execution environment? Is that correct, Reese?
Yeah, that's right. I think we should actually start with what the execution environment is, because taking a step back, the way that I think about CLIs, APIs, GraphQL, MCPs, all of these is basically they're just tools. And what is the tool? It's just a function. And what is a function? A function is a name, input arguments, and output arguments. And when you think about how you can represent all of the actions your agent can do as an ID, input and output, you can then get really flexible with where it runs. And so let me dive into the
It turns
whiteboard.
out we built a lot
Um,
of thing called software that does that exact same thing,
yeah,
and it's
exactly.
really flexible.
Um, and so like you can see like how we done this for 2 years. Before we gave the agents a bash tool, we would like throw that we'd be like, hey, here's your context window. Here's like write, read, create web tree, open PR, right? Like we would create all of these verbose tools and we would like dump them all into the context window.
And the model
And be
needs
like,
to know the name and the input schema and all the parameters for all of them, which, like, among other things, eats a lot of context.
yeah. And we'll get into this in a second, but also like live reloading these tools is pretty hard because you don't want to bust the prompt cache. And so there's just kind of a lot that this model has in that you have to dump all the tools into context. You can't like dynamically load tools. You can do like the like evolution of this. That if you go use ChatGPT, what it does is it exposes like a search tools,
Right. Yeah, Claude does
and an
this too.
invoke.
It like offloads your tools to search if you have too many.
Yeah, and it's actually
And then
not
it's
using. It's actually not
yeah.
using any. There's not like an execution environment here. And so when the model, and so this like this argument would be, like function name, like name, args.
Yep. And then you lose all the
Um,
type safety and everything that you get from the Bandido tool calling.
I think you still sort of get. I don't know that type safety matters too much in this one. My main problem with this one is you're still like dumping the entire response into the model's context. And so you can imagine like a create GitHub PR tool.
You get a
That would have,
giant blob of JSON, right?
yeah, you get a huge bubble of JSON. And so what people have found, probably starting with like Claude Code, is well, what if we give the agent bash plus CLIs? And so now this like people are still putting like write tools in, but now there's the bash tool. And I would say like bash is kind of our first execution environment, going back to that concept. And the way that I think of the execution environment is it's a place where you can invoke tools, chain them together, and filter their output. And also in some like live reload the tools.
And you can do that with Bash, right? You can like pipe things together. It's just really janky and weird.
Yeah, that's the like yes, that's why bash worked so well. Let me actually jot those down under execution environment.
Yeah, keep going. I'm trying to keep up and just add some more
Yeah.
things here, but
So live reloading, chaining calls together. I would maybe say like accessing a larger ecosystem. I would like put that down kind of as a footnote, but I'll say what I mean on that one in a second. Filtering output. So on accessing a larger ecosystem, when you give your agent bash, it's able to access things like the GitHub CLI, and now you're not like creating bespoke tools for the GitHub CLI.
And you can even do npx stuff where like you don't even have to install it. It doesn't matter as long as Node is installed on the machine, you can go run the thing.
Yeah. And what I would especially call out is the live reloading of tools. Because when we look at things like code mode, so code mode was introduced probably like I think 8, maybe like
It's been a
12,
while.
12
Yeah.
months ago. It started in an Apple paper. One of the reasons it's actually a really challenging problem is the like things that Bash solves, especially around being able to like live reload the tools. Anyways,
Right. And the same thing with Bash, right? You can
Wait,
install a new
I think we're
package
getting
and then it's just available.
I think we're getting
Yeah.
super, super technical really fast. I think there's a lot of people that are just like probably maybe want to catch up really fast and have not seen this stuff. Why the
Yeah.
heck?
Yeah.
Why can I not just use bespoke tools? Like, what is the power from an end user? What capability? What practical outcomes do I win by running Arbitrary? I think we should discuss that really fast and just catch everyone else up. This is like very technical, and like we're gonna start like Why reloading? Why the heck does it matter, right? Like,
Yeah.
let's talk about tangible, practical outcomes for a user.
The problem with bespoke tools is you're gonna be basically limited in what they define. And there's a good number of
Yeah,
problems.
let's keep
Oh,
going
yeah.
with the PR example. So it's like with bespoke tools, you have
Yeah.
your context window with your set of like tools that are enabled. And then the user asks for a thing, and then the model might do a tool call, and you can basically only call the tools that are in that tool set, basically, right? But with Bash, the model can call something like plus
I think like
CLI tools. The model can run something like, brew install GH, and then in that same context window without busting the cache, it can run GHPR create.
yeah,
Does
and
that
I think the key part to note here for everyone is this is not like I know we were talking about busting the cache, that's nice for efficiency, but it's not just about busting the cache. The problem is if you think about software and redeployment times. If a user asks me for a new feature in BAML, I have to update the BAML pipeline. I have to add that language feature into the BAML, do a release, and the user has to update. That means the power of the software relies on me as the developer. The power of Bash is that the power of the software relies on the person running the system. The person running the system has full autonomy on exactly what capabilities that they want to include.
there's another subtlety too, right? Is like with MCP, the user can add tools, but they're still like static per context window. In this case, the
Oh,
model can
well,
add tools.
you could just have an MCP server that you dynamically add tools to, and now you have a dynamic tool set and the MCP service as well.
Yeah, MCP
Like,
allows the user to, but like the list tools only happens at the beginning of the context window. The model's never going to relist the set of tools
no,
in the
you can.
server.
You can just tell the model to relist tools, and I think it calls a list tools action again. And you can re-register the tool.
Um,
That's an implementation detail of the harness, more so than anything else.
okay.
Like the API
All right, keep
exists and
going. Keep
technically you
going
can
with
do
the
it.
point you were making.
Yeah. The second thing to really keep in mind here is when you're actually doing this capability unlock and the power goes to the user. The most important thing is we're taking this other benefit that the models have been trained. There's tons of data on Bash. Like this doesn't just coincidentally work. It works because like most of the internet and most of software navigation and most tutorials on the web is tell you to run Bash commands. And so it's not a coincidence that the model just happens to be good at this. It's the way that we've done stuff. So it's actually even in the case of at least coding and a lot of workflows that people have, Bash is way more aligned to the training data than any of these bespoke tools are. And we can do post training and get it closer and you can get some benefit. But a lot of value prop just comes straight from Bash. And for example, like whenever I see, I don't know if you guys, Reese and Dexter, I know, for example, whenever I see Claude starting to do sed commands, I'm like, it's fun. It's like, because that's not a command that I as a developer use very often. And I know no
Yeah.
one else uses sed. And just like, so the edit tool has value for that reason because it's better than sed. And because it should not, that was training data on it. Do you guys agree with that kind of thinking?
Yeah, I agree with that. I also, this is anecdotal, but like I've noticed that people basically describe when the models have access to Bash that they're like happier to do more tool calls. When you give them kind of a place where they're like, oh, you can express whatever you want, and do as many tool calls as you want. They seem to invoke a good amount more, but that's kind of more anecdotal. So,
Yeah, and that's probably because Bash is designed to be is like run one command, then run another command. And again, it just goes back to how the internet frames Bash. How many of you like do pipe commands by default, like 90% of the time? I chain maybe one and command,
yeah.
right? Normally. And if I tell my users to install something, I chain one. So it makes sense that the models are kind of replicating that behavior. I think the problem with Bash though is if you've ever worked in a company, and obviously all three of us have, and I'm sure many of the people on stream have as well. What do you do when your Bash file gets to be like 500 lines long? What do you tell someone on your team?
I have them rewrite it
Rewrite
to
this as a program.
Yeah.
Exactly. Rewrite as a program. And I think that's kind of what people are hitting up against now, where models are getting more capable. And like we went from bespoke tools to Bash, and that was good. But now we're trying to make it do more Bash. And like we all know that like sed and like xargs and all these other bash commands are bad. Just write for loops and other simpler constructs that represent the same idea in like a program. And you can get way more power that comes from like a capability and reliability perspective, because that's how we as humans have decided that software is more maintainable. And that's, I think, in my eyes, the power of code mode. It's the next step after bash.
Yeah, I think what's really incredible about Bash is like, yeah, the loading a tool is accessing the broader ecosystem, filtering the output so you don't dump a ton of tokens into context. And yeah, really as just like the first kind of execution layer, it really shines. But then I think what's interesting is to look at the limitations of it. And I'm like actually a bit of a Bash hater here.
Oh,
I mean,
I think Bash is going to be considered harmful by the end of 2026. People are going to want to move away from it.
I have been tweeting about this for so long,
Yeah.
and everyone's
Yeah.
been calling me wrong. And I found with the Codex tweet, I was like, vindication.
Wait, are you guys also Nix users?
No.
Okay.
No,
I was just checking.
So there's
I
like a
believe
bunch of
in
things.
Nix, but
No harm on Nix, by the way. Nix is great software, but
Just go actually grab the. I've written up at one point like all of my issues that I take with Bash.
oh, there we
Okay.
go. That's what we need.
Let's see. So let's see which of these are actually relevant. Sharing signed in state between agents is like more of a problem when you're using MCPs than it is Bash, because you like sign into the MCP and it works well. This is a big one. So like the Google CLI, I'm pretty sure you can only be like signed into one account for that whole CLI at once. And so just to like give a bit of
On the
well,
full
like
machine, by
MPI.
the way, not just like per session. It's like the machine can log into one.
global state. We love that, right?
Yeah.
Ooh,
And there's
Workspace
ways to
CLI.
hack around it, and you can pass in like an auth command every single time, but effectively it's just one for
I'm
like
getting the
all intents and purposes.
I'm getting the real command here because I realize that people are going to run these things.
Yeah, don't get slop squatted. Don't slop squat the audience, please.
Yeah, so you run this command and then you're like, Goog login, and now you've got one account tied to this CLI. And there's like, when you think about what the Google Workspace CLI is doing, and I had like my agent go and read the code for it, it's purely an API wrapper, right? And so then we get the question of like, why can't we just let the model call the API? Like, you don't need these bespoke CLIs for every API endpoint.
To like talk on Reese's point a little bit, like this behavior, if you think about like why are sandboxes getting so popular? Well, like if you want to offer a Google CLI to your users, like you don't have a choice. You need
Yeah.
a sandbox because like you have global states. Like you're basically screwed if you don't do
Yeah,
this.
and I haven't dived into Bash too much. On like there's just Bash, which is a pretty good implementation.
Yeah.
But you
We
can't
use it
use
actually.
things. Yeah, but you can't use things like the Google Workspace CLI in it, because it's depending on like the full kind of like Bash ecosystem. And so when you look at making there's a ton of agents out there that like don't need a sandbox. But when you introduce these like CLIs and these dependencies, you've introduced a whole ton of like overhead that now your users are like, now the people that are like trying to consume it have to take on. And you're also like excluding a whole I would say like non-technical audience. There's a huge audience that wants their agent to be able to read their emails, but doesn't want to but like doesn't know what a CLI is and isn't running dangerously skip permissions, that doesn't get covered by that. Other callouts that I'll make on why I dislike Bash is, and I get pushback on this one a lot, but like you don't know everything that the agent can do with that CLI. And
Oh, and you think that's a bad thing?
yeah, because for like the GitHub CLI, there's like delete project endpoints in there. And like, yes, there's auto mode, but I want to be on the cause where the AI companies try and convince major tech companies that it's fine for them to run in auto
For
mode
Haiku to decide what is safe and what is not.
Yeah. Like if you're a company, you want to completely block or delete actions from the agent.
But
Or maybe
uh,
yeah.
I buy that. But can I devil's advocate for this one?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
haven't we had this problem with humans for a long time? Like you're a company of like 10,000 or 100,000 employees. Like one of them will accidentally delete the repos. You just fix that by making sure that like you build access control patterns so that one of them doesn't delete the repo, and you just like do that.
That's true. The like maybe counterpoint that I would give is so delete the repo might be like an extreme example.
Yeah.
The one I'd
There's
maybe more
there's
go to,
various levels of harm. I do understand that that can happen. Some harm will definitively happen.
yeah, the one that I'd maybe go to is like a friend of mine wants to set up their like OpenClaw to be able to access their email, but they never wanted to be able to send any emails. And for
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
blocking
Not
those
every
actions,
software is as well permissioned as GitHub and Slack. GitHub and
yeah,
Stripe.
even if they were well permissioned, it's like you like have you have like two options in that one. You can either um like your user account still needs to be able to send emails. Um and so like you
Right, so you have to
kind of
go
can't
make
like
you have to like go make a service account. If you want to play by their
yeah.
rules and use their fine-grained auth, then you have to
Yeah.
create a separate account, provision it, know when you're switching into it and
Valid.
out of it,
Valid.
and
Okay.
hope that you did it right.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm convinced. I'm convinced. Access control patterns need to be rethought. There's an opportunity for you, Okta or Auth0. Go for it.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I agree.
You know,
By default, it's really hard.
all right. Let's keep going through this list, and then I have one that I think is missing from here actually that I want to talk about.
Yeah. Oh, this is my like biggest pain point with Bash is you have no idea what's read only and what's destructive. There might be
And it
some
kind of
like
goes
spec.
into the list all tools. Like there's no information that lets you query the tool corpus effectively.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no
And
audit.
so
There's no audit system effectively.
yeah, when you like are using the Google Workspace CLI, it's dropped all of the like it should be semantics of like get, put, delete, etc. Um, and like that's a like huge pain point because I'm
So,
actually like fine with get or actions running automatically. I mean, it depends. Obviously, there's like
well, I
some
mean, it's just
companies.
get and post though. Let's be real. Modern internet is pure get and post.
Yeah.
People are
Um.
OG REST is coming back, man. I know a lot
No
of people who
chance.
will say
No
that
chance.
so Twitter REST was like 2011. They decided we're just going to use Git and Post, and it was one of the first like really big APIs that
Yeah.
went super viral was the Twitter API, and they just had Git and Post. But a lot of like CDN style semantics, where if you use all the HTTP verbs, you can take advantage of some like interesting cache invalidation, and like basically
Yeah.
to get the most out of your CDN, I think you do actually want to start using all the verbs. But anyways, we're way off topic. Keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
um. The wildcard one, I'll like nix that one because like you can write esoteric bash command like approval things.
You shouldn't, but you can.
Yeah, and that one feels like the knowing what's destructive feels like a duplicate. And then I like the last thing I'd say on bash is it's just like not very shareable. Um, like it's like I guess you can do like here's your install command, and then each of you like are off to that. But there's a lot of friction in how bash works today, I would say.
The one that I actually care about a lot, since we talk about like context engineering all the time, is like output shaping is really
Yeah.
like hard in Bash. And I want to like just take this example from over here that we were doing for a while, which is like, okay, I want to create a PR, right? And so if I do this in like basically MCP world or custom tools world, this thing is going to return a whole lot of like tool output, right? So you get this big response JSON, and that whole blob is going to go into your context window because the tool doesn't know which of those things you might need. And so if you're doing another operation, and then like let's say the assistant wants to return back just the URL, right?
Yeah, then you make another
So
call.
in this
or
world, you
another
have the. So let's say this contains the URL directly, right? But it also contains a shit ton of extra noise. So in Bash, you could do this by taking your GHPR create and changing it into, GHPR create and pipe it into, JQ dot whatever long path dot, HTTP URL, right? And then the model doesn't actually see the whole thing. It just sees the URL instead of that like giant JSON blob. And so your response JSON from the bash tool call is like pretty small. But it still requires the model like knowing to do that. And if it accidentally like doesn't do that, then it's gonna, you just ate, 5,000 tokens of extra context that you didn't need. And what's really interesting to me, and like you see this with like the worst one for me is like, bun run test into head-n40
Oh my god,
or
I hate
whatever,
this crap.
where it like runs the 5-minute test suite.
And then it's like, oh,
Test suite.
something failed. I didn't get which one failed because I used
but I
head
didn't see
or I
it.
used tail.
Yeah.
And I have to run the
And
whole
then so
test
it
suite
runs
again.
it again into grep, error or fail. And the model just like keeps doing this shit over and over again. We've gotten a little bit better about this of like automatically offloading it to context, and that tool works, but the model itself actually is still obsessed with like cleaning up the output before it sees it, which means you keep running this test suite over and over again. And what I really like about like the promise of code mode is like being able to run up a code block of like const PR result equals tools.github.create PR. And if you know the schema, you can basically say like, console.log PR result dot whatever dot HTTP URL, right? You
It's
do
the
some
same,
deep path.
and then you get type checking on
And-
this. So like, you actually get a compiler
Yeah.
error at the time you generate the code that this is invalid code otherwise.
Oh, I don't run type checking is like too slow.
Oh, you
that
just need a
might
better
you don't run
language.
type checking on the code block.
not at the moment, because like they're actually
What
pretty good at
language?
not writing TypeScript.
Yeah, you just change that to writing like a language that actually has a fast compiler, and then this is not a problem.
Yeah, this is a really cool part of code mode where it's like you can be super flexible with it.
So the thing that I actually really like though is you can say, const PR result equals const PR result equals ... You can do these kind of like things where you accumulate results. And this is terrible code, and this is like Python pseudocode. We switched to Python instead of JavaScript. But like then you just console.log the thing that you want. And so let's say there is a lot of data and all of it matters and you don't just want the PR URL, like what you're able to do is instead of like, tool 1 and then you get the JSON and then you do tool 2 where you take this like parts of this output JSON and pass it into the next tool. Maybe you're doing like a SQL insert of everything you got, and then you get a response from there, and then you run tool 3. But actually you only actually care about like these are implementation details, right? You only actually care about some like small field on the end here. And in code mode, you can just actually, const result 1 equals tool 1, const result 2 equals tool 2 of result 1 dot filter, etc. You can do all this logic on it, which hides a bunch of the intermediate stuff. Result 2.
I'm gonna write this out for you, Bex.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. I don't know. I know, Reese, you were probably getting here, but this is like one of the most interesting things to me of code mode is being able to
I mean, you go from basically going call like the number of hops the model drops to a upper bounded like it's like guaranteed 2 calls as opposed to n calls if you know what you're running.
yeah. And so code mode gets you a lot more flexible of like you could write a custom tool that is like fetch data from source A and pipe to source B. But this is like a very specialized thing, and you have to make one of these tools for every single combination of source and destination.
Yep.
Whereas like in code mode, you just have the fetch calls and the like insert calls, and they all you can the model can stitch them together really easily, doing a thing it's really good at, which is writing code.
Can I show you guys one last thing? Really
Yeah,
fast that I think is interesting?
Okay, Vaibhav's gonna. Yeah.
This is
Oh, yes, the model can
actually
do this.
this is probably the most interesting part of code mode. And like we've been running a bunch of benchmarks on trying to see what languages models are good at. It turns out, models are very, very good at Python, primarily because of this one feature. In Python, you can run Python-C and just write arbitrary code. And that is basically a superpower to a model. It's like code
I mean,
mode
most
without any
languages
special
have
code
that.
mode.
You have
Nope. Rust
you have
doesn't have
Ruby
this.
dash E.
Go does.
You have that's true.
TypeScript doesn't
Okay.
have
When
this.
you
Rust doesn't
when you
have
run
this.
Python-C, where's it getting the tool definitions from on this one?
That's a good point.
What do you mean?
Yeah,
the
it
tool
has to like
definitions?
import. Yeah, so you'd have to basically like get those tools installed into your runtime.
Yes.
Which
So
means
what
you
you
need
can
to have
do,
UV and management and things like that.
what you can do is you can take this to the next level and just swap out your Python-C command, just call UV run and run that script
Oh,
correctly. And
interesting.
then it just works with all the import commands and everything, as long as you tell it that. So it just
Nice, that
works
makes
out of the
sense.
box with like custom virtual environments per script.
Yeah.
Because like UV allows you to single file scripts now.
Yeah.
I'm not letting my model write Python.
Yes.
All right.
Ethically, I agree. There's an ethical argument about here about Python
right.
being a questionable language.
All right, Reese, we've been yapping for a bit. What's your take on all this?
I would go back to with bash plus CLI for a second and just like very explicitly to call out that like what is the output to this GitHub PR create command? And like the answer is that you have no idea. Because
GitHub PR create is probably a bad example because the model actually does know exactly what that returns, but most
true.
CLIs it doesn't know.
Yeah, and so like I think that you'll like see a bunch of early success with CLIs like this one, but we haven't even talked about skills plus CLI. Like there's a thing where people will ship skills with their CLIs, and I just like don't know that that's actually like needed unless you're getting into combining actions. But you have to like ship a skill with your CLI now because the model doesn't actually know the CLI that well. And so it has to like leverage that skill to know what the output is. And then I dropped in a screenshot here of like when you add the GitHub API, the output, there's like that needs to be improved. But like this is what the model sees, right? It's like, yeah, so this is like this is the GitHub API with the create endpoint, and this is like the TypeScript representation of it. And so the model gets, hey, this is the input and this is the output.
That's
and then
totally
there's like
useless.
varying code mode implementations.
Wait, why does it? Why does
fix
it
the
say
output
pull
or
request?
something.
I can't do
Something
anything
up
with
there.
that. Does it just give you the number, or is that like a type? Sorry, the dash is maybe throwing me off. I realize that this is
No, that's a bug on my end. I need to
okay.
go
Okay, I was
fix
like,
that.
it's not subtraction. I'm certain of that.
Yeah, let me get. I'll find a better one.
Yeah, but I do agree in
Screenshot
general. Type information is like incredibly powerful for informing the model of what to expect.
Okay,
Like a string
here's
is.
one of an actual. Here's one of an actual output.
Oh, there we go. Nice.
And yeah, so the model like knows what the input will be, what the types are. In my implementation, I gave it basically the ability to like control what depth it goes to. Because for a lot of them, they do actually have like pretty nasty like nested arguments. And so that's
and you want to recurse through the types, and you can basically say like, only give me 2 levels of depth, and everything else just leave the reference in, and I'll look it up if I need it, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So that's super nice from a like token efficiency point of view. Another call out I would make is like readability of what the model is doing. So this is a screenshot from I think Codex. And this is I was like, hey, go through my email and like see if I got anything from like Anthropic or OpenAI on like the open source programs. And this is one tool that it wrote to like take the Google APIs, list it, filter that list, slice it for each item, get the like email like details on that specific email. If it's interesting, add it to an array, add it to like filter it out. What I think is really cool about this is like when I see the model write these crazy bash commands, I have no idea what it's doing. But like, I mean, I've looked at this one before, so it's like more immediately obvious what it's doing to me. But it feels a lot more readable than bash commands as well, which is nice. Like the
Yeah, I mean,
expressiveness here
code
of being.
also just
Oh
like
yeah.
syntax highlighting, right? It's just nice. It's
Oh, so
way better
actually,
than reading a bash command.
this didn't have syntax highlighting. I just gave it to ChatGPT, and I told it to add syntax highlighting to this code block.
Well, what I mean is like you can take arbitrary code, and if you take code and syntax highlighting it, then we can just like do that very easily.
I mean, technically you can syntax highlight bash, but it's just not very expressive as a language.
Yeah,
Oh, amazing.
it's
He literally took a screenshot and said highlight it.
that's funny.
It's the welcome to the future.
Damn. Dude, should we just like replace the
When
syntax
I will say,
highlighter in our IDEs with an image model?
when we were first doing BAML, the hard part about making a program language was like showing syntax for it. Like you wouldn't believe the hours I spent in Figma coming up with new syntax and highlighting it manually, just so someone wouldn't be disgusted by a plain white file. And like I would have saved so many hours if I did this thing.
Reese, there's one question I have, and I think we talked about this on Sunday, but I'd love to hear your take on this kind of
Yeah.
for the audience is like, you know, you mentioned the model doesn't know the output schema of GHPR create.
Yeah.
What is stopping me from basically running like gh help, and then the model runs GHPR help, and then runs GHPR create help? Like, why is this not good?
I mean, I feel like this immediately is why it's not good, right? Like you've now taken like 3 tool calls to one of the things that I'm thinking about is like how do we scale agents to like tens of thousands of tools? And it's not that they need tens of thousands of tools. It's just like you want your agent to be able to do everything that you can do. And when you get into that, like the things that I've got added to my agent are like my postdoc, my Axiom, my Stripe, WorkOS, like all of this stuff. And like I was setting up like a new postdoc environment, and I just told it as a one-off, hey, like update the like make this postdoc project. And that's like if we like look at what that looks like in the postdoc world, it like you have to use the postdoc CLI and then run -help. Whereas when you've got this like pattern of being able to do tool search and then invoke it, the model just like immediately gets it on like what the right things to call are.
Okay, so like in the sort of tool search world, you basically instead of running gh help, you're like search PR create, and the response is going to be something like this schema that you dropped in before, right?
Yeah, and I'm
Um,
still figuring out what the right like responses to give to the agents are. Because you could either do like you could just do tool names in this one. Alternatively, you could do tool names plus like a brief definition of them. Um, it's like how much do you want to burn on tokens to give them immediate search results? Versus like having a describe tool in as well. Um,
We
okay.
actually were thinking about this. We've been thinking about this a little bit, which is like maybe the question I have is like at some point, if you want to give the person, you have two choices. You either dump all the context all the time, and every query is extremely expensive, or you give some sort of granular output of context of what you're willing to give to the end user. In which case, discovery is expensive.
yeah.
And there's no middle ground there. Like the middle ground is you predict the intent of the user and then you give them that. And that's kind of what like ad systems do, right? Like they predict your intent. Google search predicts your intent based on your history and it says this is rank one search for you. So I'm trying to maybe what I'm trying to figure out is like I think for most users they probably understand like yes we can do like dash dash help everywhere or we can do describe. But it doesn't sound like I want one or the other. It sounds like I just want to be able to do both at all times.
Yeah, that's kind of the what I expose to the model is like try and give it primitives that it can compose, basically. And so like let it control the depth, let it control when it gets described. Um, and I found like pretty good results with that so far.
My assumption is like every single CLI tool will kind of have to evolve to do the same kind of thing, where you have both search and describe effectively built in by default.
So you want,
Rather,
instead of gh dash dash help, you want gh search and gh
nope,
describe, and then
I don't even want that. I just want to say like GHPR create, and I want to tell me that there's no such thing as PR create. Did you mean this?
Interesting.
And then I just wanted to tell me that. Like by
but
default,
then
I
you
just
still
type in
need the
commands.
description, right?
My inclination is that's not a thing that should live in the CLI. I'm trying to remember if I've still got this in Executor, but with Executor, like when the model screws up a tool call, it will throw an error with the closest matching path to help it get into it. And I think some like shells do this as well with CLI commands. That's like, did you mean
Yeah.
this? Um,
But those
and
shells can't possibly have the same information as this bespoke CLI tool itself. Like for
in
example,
yeah.
like when the compiler fails to compile code, it can tell you, did you mean XYZ? The shell cannot.
Is
There's
the
like
shell not being
contextual
able
information.
to like function of not knowing everything a CLI can do? Or is it a function of like the CLI has specific knowledge about
The
like this when
CLI
you
has
say PR?
specific knowledge that it might want to run some specific computation on in order to give you guidance on what it should do.
Yeah.
And that's probably bespoke to every single CLI. And then similarly, if you think of the shell as also a CLI, which it kind of is, because like shell SH and the other shells are just commands you can run. The shell itself should also have knowledge about what it can do to some level of organization. Like I can call it, I have all these things installed. If you type in the wrong thing or typed in some action, maybe it should just naturally list out. And like if you're building an execution environment, I think this is really possible. Where like the shell just tells you this is what you should do. But then similarly, if you run exception handlers are built. Like basically, the exception handler can live at different places, and if you don't handle it, the thing above you will handle it, but less likely worse than you handled it yourself. Because the thing with the innermost call stack has the most information about what it could do in
Right.
theory. That's kind of what I'm imagining. Like in the world of shell, likely every shell script should have exception handling for invalid input. And if it fails, then it bubbles up to the shell, and the shell says, "Nope, I have something else I can do." Instead. And therefore, the shell tells you what it can do. And if you think of like a standard error code, and obviously no one's going to do this because this requires like changes to the operating system and like or the shell commands and everything. And no one's,
Oh, you want more?
no,
You want more integer error codes? You want non-byte
yeah,
error codes? Good luck, buddy.
I, I want a special error code that we just overtake that says I have returned a thing that's basically a did you mean or some like exception handling thing. And if you think you have if you as my parent have a better context of what the user might have tried to do, you can instead do yours and ignore my output. And I think that would be like a very
Interesting.
interesting way to do automatic discovery for any call,
Yeah.
where it's kind of like a smart discovery rather than like just the bare primitives. And that's a wild idea. I don't know if anyone's going to go do that. That'd be my like.
Okay.
I wish I had this.
Okay. I see Reese typing out some final thoughts. Let's do a couple
Yeah.
questions from the chat and then we'll wrap it up. We've probably got about like 8 minutes left. So you want to do a couple questions and then Reese will let you kind of send us off with your big takeaways.
Yeah, sounds good.
I think people are asking like, how does this relate to what Google and Gemini and like Claude do with code execution? Is this the same thing? Is this different?
I don't know what Google does with code execution, but Claude does have a code, some form of like execute tools as code. The call out I would maybe make is that there's like a reason we're not all using code mode right now. And part of the reason that I think that is because like the supporting infrastructure around it needs to be built. Bash, like you can't replace Bash immediately with a execute JavaScript tool.
It just doesn't
Because of
have
like
all the things that Bash lets you do built into it yet.
yeah, you don't get if you just replace it like with a JavaScript tool, you don't get like tool search, you don't get TypeScript declarations. you don't get being able to convert OpenAPI, GraphQL, Google Discovery into that format. And so, like, I actually would probably argue that if you're just going from like a set of like 5 tools into Bash or code mode, like the win isn't that much. But when you're going for like agents that can either run like serverlessly or don't require a full VM, that's where, and like need access to a whole ton of tools, that's where code mode like really shines. Kind of looks like a duck. Do you guys see it?
Oh,
When I
okay.
do this?
There was a
Okay, so today Bash, there's some overlap and there's some things you can do with code mode without Bash, but right now Bash lets you do a whole lot more. And so like using one-off execution basically needs to expand out a little bit before we can start to rely on it for everything, is basically what I'm hearing.
Yeah, and I'll like do a small self plug of like if you want to try it out, there's I'm like trying to build all the supporting stuff that you need with Executor. And so you can like use the Executor SDK and then you get like live reloading of tools. You can import OpenAPI specs, MCP servers, etc. And like tie credentials to them.
And code mode basically can do all the Bash stuff eventually and is just better overall.
Yeah.
It's like it has the capability to do more in the long term.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
Cool.
the hard part about all this system stuff, and like we have giant companies that are built around this. It's just like simulating the virtual environment is like tremendously hard. Think about how big VMware is. Like that's basically what you need to do to enable all these systems at a foundational level. Like you need a virtual file system, you need virtualized network calls, virtualized sockets. And basically everything your OS can do, you just need to make programmatically available through regular code, but then just like
At which
remap
point
it to like doing something else.
you've
basically
built
you're
an
building
operating
VMware.
system.
Well, so
Yeah,
my like maybe pushback on that is you can actually represent CLIs in code mode. I don't know, the like base file operations that Bash has are really good. And I maybe question like replacing those with code mode. Where I really like code mode is for it just gives you a way that you can import any like OpenAPI, GraphQL, like MCP server
yes.
into one way that the model really likes to call. And so I view it a lot more for like agents that can not so much for coding agents, but more for like general
data
assistant
analytics,
agents.
right? Or like
Yeah,
other things that
exactly.
you want to do. It's like almost everything has a programmatic API. Anything that you would typically build a bespoke SaaS for, instead of setting up the whole app, setting up the whole system, just give it a script and it will kind of run the script in a safe execution environment. Is that kind of right, Reese?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I agree.
Sweet. Okay. Final thoughts, Reese. I got your notes up here.
Yes.
Send us away, and then we'll tell people where. I mean, you all know where to find me and Vaibhav on Twitter or on the online, etc. We'll let Reese share how to get in touch with him if you're interested in this.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah, so the first thing is MCPs, CLIs, OpenAPI, GraphQL to call discovery. These are all just tools, and you can call tools however you want. You can call these through Bash. Like, when you convert an MCP server to Bash, the reason you're able to do that is because the MCP server has like structure about what it is and what it can do. There's a reason you can't go from a CLI to an MCP server. And so I would like call 2 things out there. The first one is like, there's a lot of like, I'd say kind of outdated information on like MCPs at this point, on like context bloat, or like them not being good. And I don't know that they make sense in every single case. And I'll go over that in a little bit. But I just think of them as tool calls, and when you realize that they're just tool calls, you can do whatever you want with them. You can do them through code mode, you can do them through Bash. I would also
it's all
probably
just types, right? It's all just
yeah.
schemas and function signatures.
I would also like, as much as I love code mode, I wouldn't like over index on it, because I think that there's a world where we find a better solution in 6 months. I can't tell you what that better solution is, but like I think that like but you have to look at the primitives, not the implementation of the primitives. And bash is an implementation of the primitives. Code mode is an implementation of the primitives. But like the tool cores are primitives. Yeah. Next one is like if you're a company and you're trying to get agents able to call all of your things, I would call out that the best thing that you can do is just have a really good open API spec, because then you can convert that into a CLI or code mode or whatever the next thing is. Having some structured representation that can be callable is really effective. I called this one out already, but like context bloat with MCPs aren't real. Like if you think about taking a CLI, taking an open API spec and converting it to a CLI, like no one complains about how many tools are available in the CLI. Because like you want your agents to be able to do a bunch of things. And it's more a harness problem or like an implementation problem of like what you're giving the agent to execute in than it is like MCP specifically. For like harness implementers or people making agents, I would try and think of it as like managing a tool catalog rather than specifically code mode or bash, because then like whatever the next best format is, you can just make your tool catalog callable in that format. And then the last one that I'll call out is how I'm thinking about the difference between MCPs, APIs, and CLIs. And I would say like MCPs are for flows. And so there's things that more clients are getting kind of access to around like MCP elicitation, MCP apps. I think that there's a lot more that we'll probably see now that we have like good versions of MCP in the next couple of months. And you can do things like getting user consent for like telemetry. That was an example from like the Vercel Claude Code plugin, where they like were using a CLI and skills, and so then like Claude would like ask the user, "Do you want to enable telemetry?" Whereas like you can do that through MCP elicitation to like get real user input. And then APIs I really think of as for like raw data access, and they're really effective. Like I've got a bunch of API specs added. But also like you're a lot of the times dealing with like raw IDs and all this stuff. And then the last one is I'll probably say that CLIs are for humans and not for agents. And like
Wow.
we've
Okay.
had a really
hot take,
fun
hot take.
we've had a fun 12 months. But it's I'll like read these
No.
articles that's like, here's how you make a good CLI, and it's like, well, MCP actually solves all these problems around like getting user input that you have.
You know, I was gonna propose an episode for next week. I was gonna tell Dexter about this, which is how to build a CLI for agents.
Oh,
This is
there's
a
a couple
hot take.
articles written about this recently. There's like people have been writing this more and more.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the
we
reason
built
that you
one that
have
we measured to be pretty good for agents, with like stats. So that's why I was like,
Oh,
oh, that's
that'd be a
very
cool
interesting.
topic. Actually,
Yeah.
evaling a CLI for agent friendliness is a really interesting story. I'd love
Yeah.
to hear that. Vaibhav.
It's been really interesting. We have a benchmark harness and everything now.
all right.
Sick.
Yeah.
I will say I'm looking from the perspective of like the next like 6 months to 12 months kind of a thing.
Also, like a really obvious stance for why CLI is for humans is like think about how we use CLIs. We use tab for autocomplete. Agents don't use tab. It's like fundamentally like the default way to build a CLI and all the tooling around it is dumb.
Yeah.
Right.
But I as much as I love the code mode concepts, I'll like explicitly call out that most like all harnesses don't have it implemented like this today. And I think that there's a ton of potential there. But at the same time, like the best thing for agents today is CLIs, but
Long term, I agree.
pretty unconvinced by them in the long term.
Yeah, the hardest part about CLIs long term is they're just not very flexible by default.
Yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
can only string in, string out. That's highly restrictive.
Ooh, I like that. I mean, technically, you can make a CLI that only reads JSON on standard in and only outputs JSON. But yes, in
But
general,
it's still
that's
the
not
type of JSON
common.
is there's a reason that we don't like the any type in TypeScript. It's bad.
One last small point of like when you control the code mode stuff, you can deal proxies to the functions instead of like calling the CLIs directly. And when you're dealing with proxies, you can insert mocks, you can insert caching, you can insert rate limiting. It just gets like all of these for me. Well, I had all these problems with like Bash, where it was like, yeah, this works, but this doesn't feel right. And then code mode kind of solved all of those.
And Bash does not scale.
Yeah.
Bash is like the worst. After like, if you have a 5,000 line Bash script, please delete it and write a Python script or a JavaScript script. I don't care what, a
Yep.
Go script, I don't care. And like Bash is the least scalable system in the world.
So this week on AI That Works, it all started with this tweet from someone at OpenAI talking about how they had code mode in the CLI. We went really deep into the difference between inline tools, MCPs, CLIs, local scripts, code mode, the different context window models, and what levels of extensibility they give you. We talked all about why self-documenting CLIs are not enough, and we need schemas and input types. We talked all about the things you can do with code mode and why they're so great for output shaping. We talked about Bash versus code mode today versus the future, and we had basically just a really good time riffing with Reese here, who's been going deep on code mode for, 6+ months now. So it was a really fun chat. I hope you guys enjoy it, and let's dig in.